All right, so first thing that we're going to do is make sure you got your calculator set up properly. Sometimes if you've got the physical calculator in your pocket and in your bag, it gets reset, bumped. And if it's on your phone, sometimes the app gets reset or restart your phone. Just make sure that you follow these steps. I always check the top right corner of my screen, as you'll see here, and I'll just give you this little video in case you have to reset to make sure that you're set up properly. Here you go. This is a quick setup for your calculator to run a thin number. Make sure it says one payment per year and begin. If it does not, just go one orange payment and then one orange either beginning or end. Make sure it's one orange begin. Good to go. All right. So now we'll go right into the, I'll give you a combination of this PowerPoint here. And there's really two risks that people run into. And the first one is die too soon and live too long. And I'm going to be back and forth on this PowerPoint, bear with me, to sort of give you the information where we found one of the secrets I think that we'd figured out was how to overcome the objections by being ahead of that curve before the objections even came up. And it wasn't 100% all the time, but it sure made the conversation a lot smoother. And I'll show you how we did that. So the two risks that most families have: die too soon, live too long. And everybody has a financial house that looks like this. Now, at some point, this is the key to business. And when you think about everybody has to have what you and myself offer from cradle to grave. They need education savings plan to get the kids started. They need protection plans as they go along. They need help with their income. They need help with their debt. They need, tax advice. Do we buy an RSP? Do we buy a TFSA? What's the best RSP for the kids? Do we do single plan? Do we do family plan? There's multiple investment options, mortgages, possibly a few. Families need a will. There's home and auto, and there's protection. And our whole program was to be able to create financial independence for families with the dollars they're already spending. Now, that's a pretty bold statement, but as we go through this, you'll understand that that's really what we're all about. And there's two lines of people's lives. The first line, they've got the accumulation or the growth phase. This is when they're working for money. And then the second line is retirement or the golden years, and usually there's no gold. Now, you kind of make this fun too, and so if we started with someone, say age 30, and run that to age 65, we've got 30, 65, 85. Take somebody who's making, husband, wife, two people, partners, whatever. Say they're each bringing in 50 grand, and you can adjust the numbers, but you take 50,000 and you run that ahead for 35 years with 3% inflation. They need 281,000 at age 65 to buy the same thing as they bought with 100. And at age 85, they need 508. Now, this is usually where I stop, and I will pull out a index chart. And so if we go over here and we look at this and we say, okay, let's talk about inflation. And this might be a bit blurry, but at least you get the idea, and you'll have your own index chart anyways. But if we go back to here, if you go back to 1950, now there's multiple index charts you can get. they all have the same numbers, just different time frames. This one starts in 1950. We've got others that start in 1946, not that it matters. The most important is that you run it to the end. Now we're doing this to where this is current, so this is 2016. This says over here, if you took a $100 bill and you followed this gray line of inflation, it says that if you had a $100 bill in 1950, you need $1,000 today to buy the same thing. That's called the rising cost of living. That's just inflation, 3.6%. So when you're doing this presentation, a lot of time, I mean, we're a little bit conservative maybe on 3%, but the idea is things are always going to cost more over time, and that's the thing that most people are not prepared for. So if we go back here, if you needed $281,000 to buy the same thing as 100 back here, your financial independence number is 4,220,000. Now, all we do is take 281 times 15. And the reason that we do that, again, not only is this your financial independence number, but this also needs to become your debt freedom date. So let's back up one more time and we'll go to, if you log into POL and the Quick app, maybe it's on your phone, maybe you're using it on your iPad, but either way, if you're on your desktop, you go to the mobile section. If you click on this number here and you scroll down to financial calculators. Now, if you look at a beginning balance here, let's type in that FIN number, okay? So let's go 4,220,000, 4,220,790. Okay, that's the beginning. And let's say through the retirement years, we were receiving, say, a 7% rate of return. And we'll back that up, you know, for 20 some years right there later on. And we want this money to last, say, 20 years. And change this to years. Now we've got to draw that money out. So if you go back to that FIN number and you divide that by 12, what you'll find is that is $23,448 a month. And all you do is press the minus button on your keyboard. It'll put it in brackets, and that'll show you, okay, age 65, we had 4.2 million. If we get a 7% rate of return through retirement, and we want our money to last 20 years, we need to draw out $23,448, which is $281,000 a year. That's your need at age 65. Now, if you look at down here, it says we will still have 4.7 million. Here's the graph over the next 20 years. But the problem is, you got to click this button called inflation, because inflation doesn't stop. So let's increase savings by, or spending, same thing, by 3%. You see how that number dropped? It drops from 4.7 million to 1.6 million. And if you come over to the right side, you click this schedule, it'll tell you the rising cost of living through retirement. So many people think that, oh, I need $1 million, I need $2 million. The number is so massive, and it's attainable. It's just people need to know that this is a big deal, and don't take it lightly. I mean, the line here showing inflation is crazy. And so that's kind of where I always started, so that when you're going back and you're talking about this presentation and you're back to your FIN number again, let's just roll that ahead till we 4.2 million. You go, okay, this is serious. And a lot of times I'll spend a little time on this, because, you know, you run into, especially younger people, say, you know, 20, 25 years old, they don't have as much, you know, experience with inflation as somebody that's obviously 55 and 60. So when you deal with someone who's 20, 25, sometimes it's fun just to say, you know what, let's phone, where's your grandpa right now? Or your grandma, or your parents even. Let's phone them up and let's just find out what they lived on. And they think, good grief, how'd you do that? Well, that's inflation. And once they understand that, then you can move forward. I think we go too fast a lot of times through this, and people go, yep, I get it. and they really don't. And so it's okay to take time on this. The next part, let's talk about compound interest. Let's talk about what do we got to do to save. So in this example, we need 4.2 million. We go, okay, what do you have saved now? Well, we got 25,000, whatever it is. So you take the 25,000 on your calculator as a present value. You take 35 years and you type in 3%, zero payment, future value. That 25,000 will be 70,000. Now, a lot of times you go, how does that even work? All right, well, let's go back here again to another piece of information that's crucial. Let's talk about Rule of 72. Let's talk about compound interest before we go through rates of return. Because there is no statistical evidence for the persistence of performance. What that means is nobody can really tell you what's going to happen tomorrow, but there's a lot of history that we can walk through, and that's another piece of the material that we'll post for you, is a behavioral graph that you can walk families through so they understand it's not markets, it's behavior. So Rule of 72, the way I explain this is, and there might be different, better ways, but I just pick a number across the top and I say, okay, let's just take 3%, for example. And if you take 3 into 72, that goes 24 times, which means if you took this first number, 10,000, 3%, 24 times, that'll double one time in 24 years. And again, another 24 years. Well, 6% goes there into 72 6 times. So you take 10, 20, 40, 80, 160 over the same time period. Or you take 12 into 72, that's 6 times. Would you like 40,000, 160, or 2,560,000? Now, the challenge is you don't want to ask and wait for an answer to where it's uncomfortable. So when I asked, I said, have you ever seen 12% consistently? And some have, some haven't, most haven't. So I go, that's interesting, yet every single one of us has a credit card in our pocket at 18%, right? They go, right. Okay. So then something that I do before I go back and forth here, before I go too much into this whole piece here of showing how the money grows, okay? Because you can go back here and look at 3%, it grows 25,000, 35 years, 3% it grows to 70, 6%, 192, 7%, 266, and 9%, 510. Before I do this, I always go into this piece here. And this is just straight up Google if you want. I go, let's just check out the top, in this case, you just Google top 15 most profitable companies in Canada. What you'll find is this list. Okay, well, out of the top 15, the top 5 most profitable companies in our country right now are banks. RBC made $10 billion. TD, $8 billion. Nova Scotia, $7 billion. And I walk clients through this to show them, and I say, here's another thing that's really, really fascinating, is RBC made $10 billion last year. And you can pick any bank you want, but this one, just RBC because it's at the top. And you go, okay, let's just Google what is RBC offering right now for a high interest savings. Well, RBC high interest savings, 2.15% until December 1st, 2017. And I go, just a second, inflation's 3.6. That's the way it's been for 50, 60, 70 years. And RBC is the most profitable company in the country. They don't even offer me inflationary rates. And yet, here's a fund run by AGF. This has been around since 1994. This is a segregated fund. I mean, there's thousands of options, but this is just your basic conservative balance fund, I guess. An asset builder 4, and I'll show you the fun facts on it in a second here. But this fund has been around since 1994, and it's averaged 6.8% over 20 years. And I always like to show this chart as well. That depending on how far back you run the fund, will tell you the rates of return from when. So if you go back here, you go when that fund started. And on the right side, these are the rates of return per year, okay? On the right side here, total returns for the year. And what I love to show is the fluctuation here on the beginning balance, how that grows and shrinks and grows and shrinks. And then just so that people can understand, and again, we'll go through some of the behavior stuff later on. But I always show this, and I go, okay, again, and maybe we talk about it multiple times, but I go, okay, RBC the most profitable. All right. Pretty lousy rate of return. Yet here's a fund that's averaged almost 7% over 20 years. And if I went on to AGF and I pulled up the fund facts, look at the holdings inside here. Look at this equity holding of Royal Bank, 2.9%. Toronto Dominion Bank. So RBC, most profitable, gives us nothing. And yet had we just bought a simple segregated fund with a guaranteed principal 75%, that's averaged 7% for over 20 years. One of the biggest holdings is RBC Bank. And you go, ain't that something? And it's crazy when you start to realize that maybe I don't know it all. And maybe the consumer, I do not believe that we have a problem of 95% people are broke in this country at age 65 because of lack of product. I think we have it because nobody knows what they're doing. And if we start with the education and we raise the financial literacy of the consumer, that's how this company became what it is. And we just baby steps, step it back, walk people through, because you go, if you can get 3%, your money's going to grow to 70,000. They instantly go, well, that's inflation, because for the first time, you just taught them inflation. Now rule of 72. Didn't know that, now they do. Well, 6%, 7%, 9%. And you go, all right, now what do I got to do? Let's find out what you have to do in addition to this. Okay. If you take my 25,000 and I need 4.2 million, what you do is you take 4,220,790 as a future value. 35 years, 3%, 25,000, and make sure you press the plus minus button on your calculator, left side. So 25,000 plus minus present value, then press the payment button, and this is what you get. At 3%, they'd have to save $66,000 a year. 66,000 out of 100 ain't happening. 34,000 out of 100, probably not happening. 26,000 out of 100, yeah, getting closer. 9% out of 100, or 15,000 out of 100 at 9%. Now, the secret for, and as far as understanding who is live, here's what I've committed to, was that if 95% of people are broke at age 65, why is it that most people that we approach say things like, I'm okay, no, I got a guy, or no, I'm good, no, but everybody's good. And yet, to me, it's impossible that I'm only talking to the 5% that are wealthy. It's not true. So if you start with an approach of give me, instead of, do you have anybody helping you? Do you know what a FIN number is? My job is to create financial independence for you with the dollars you're already spending, and try and help you through every piece inside your financial house. And you can't do any business till you understand. And you raise their understanding. To die too soon is you don't come home. To live too long is you do come home, you don't have any money. I think we make a big mistake walking into people's homes or into their lives and talking about life insurance first. You know, I think that if we create value and we help them think about the future, and they think about being free and less tension and financially independent, I know that families will do whatever it takes to protect that plan. The best laid plan in the world doesn't make any sense if the family doesn't come home, the husband or the wife or the contributors don't come home. So the purpose of life insurance was to protect the dependency period of your life. It was never designed to buy forever. But the slicksters come in, they got the whole life guys, the universal life guys, the permanent guys, and all they do is talk about fear and dying. We want to talk about being free and living. And so you buy as much life insurance as you can for as little as possible, and you get rid of it as fast as possible. And you got to figure out how to work all those things together. For this example, if each of them are making $50,000 and they had minimum $500 each, and something happened to one, well, say this $50,000 is gone, there's $500,000 put back into this financial house, and the family can pull off another $50,000 to keep the plan going. And that's simple. How much insurance do you buy, and for how long? Well, as soon as you got money, that's kind of a crazy line, but the idea, and you see the theory of decreasing responsibility, many different companies are trying to use that now, but the problem is they haven't kept it simple enough. Buy term, invest the difference. I hope this step-by-step helps. And in the next bunch of pieces that we're gonna do for you, we'll sort of spin off these same numbers. Every scenario that we run for you will be based on this scenario, just so that the numbers match up and then you can follow it. And I hope this helps. And welcome to some feedback. And appreciate you listening. Thank you.